Good afternoon, everybody, and I have the pleasure of welcoming you to the conference today, and also welcoming you to this particular part of the 2021 European Forum on Urban Forestry. To say the least, it has been a strange year. The planning for a normal EFUF meeting in Manchester last summer, or last May, more accurately, last spring, based on urban forestry for a resilient future, had to be cancelled due to the COVID pandemic. And the consequence of that was, of course, quite severe on all of us, and we were left wondering what comes next. Anyway, EFUF is nothing if it's not resilient itself. And the consequence of that, and predicting that 2021 would see continuing problems, the decision was made that in this year we would move towards having a digital semester, a series of events starting in March and ending in May. And of course, we were very keen at EFUF to capture the work that had been done last year by Manchester City of Trees and their partners, and continue to hold the event that we had planned, albeit in a slightly different format. As way of introduction, I also need to say that EFUF itself is very much based on partnership. And this particular event has been facilitated not only by Manchester City of Trees, but also by the European Forest Institute, for which EFI and EFUF have a ongoing relationship, and also by the European Union research project Clearinghouse, which is looking at urban forestry as a nature-based solution. The project is nearly halfway through. I don't intend to spend too much more time introducing this afternoon. A theme for the next 3 days, taken together a conference made up of 3 individual webinars, is Urban Forestry for a Resilient Future. And with that, I would like to hand over to my colleague Pete in Manchester City of Trees. I've known Pete myself for quite a number of years, and it's nice to be working together with him on this. So Pete, as moderator of today, over to you.
Thanks, Clive. It feels like this has been a long time coming, because obviously, as Clive explained, the pandemic did prevent us from running our original proposed conference in Manchester. So I'm very pleased that all of that time and effort hasn't gone to waste, and that we're able to do something online, which I hope you will all find interesting and motivating. So I think if we just start with what the programme is for today, we've got 3 speakers lined up, 3 excellent speakers. We have Carl Asprey and Samuel Evans from the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and Piero Pellizzaro from the Municipality of Milan. And collectively, the speakers will be talking about the role of trees and green infrastructure in making our towns and cities more resilient places, specifically from a flood management and from a cooling perspective. So that's just a little bit about what's coming ahead. I should really obviously introduce who I am. My name is Peter Stringer. I'm the Green Infrastructure Resilience Manager from the City of Trees in Greater Manchester. And if we go on to the next slide, what is a City of Trees? Well, the City of Trees is a community forest, one of 10 community forests in in England. And we have been operating really now for nearly 30 years. However, we rebranded recently as City of Trees in 2015, and our objective as a community forest is to plant 3 million trees in Greater Manchester, effectively 1 tree for every person living in the city region, which takes in 10 local authority areas. However, it's not just about planting trees, it's also managing what we have as well. And so we've made a commitment to work with our partners to manage 2,000 hectares of woodland so they can be used by local communities again. And you'll see that our last main objective is to make sure that those communities have the opportunity to use those woodlands and benefit from those woodlands and get all the really good things that we can get from experiencing nature and wildlife at first hand. Next slide, please. So City of Trees is part of an initiative across the north of England, so stretching from Liverpool in the west all the way over to Hull in the east, and you can see that from the map extract. And that area takes in 4 of the 10 community forests in England. So the Mersey Forest, and they will be speaking tomorrow. Also City of Trees, which covers Greater Manchester. Then the White Rose Forest, which covers West Yorkshire, and the Haywoods Community Forest in around Hull and Humberside. And collectively, these 4 forests have been given the target of planting 50 million trees over the next 25 years. And of course, many of those trees will be in urban areas and also accessible to lots of urbanites if they're moving or traveling into the countryside. Next slide, please. So just in terms of today's program, I mentioned that we have 3 excellent speakers. We'll also be having a small video show, we hope at 3:30. And then there will be a panel question and answer session. So what we would like attendees to do today is, if they have questions for any of the speakers, to put their question in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, which I hope you can all see. And what we would like you to do is say who you are, which organisation you represent, which speaker your question is directed at, and obviously the nature of your question. We will try to answer as many questions as we can, but of course we don't have a huge amount of time, but we'll do the best that we can. A little bit of housekeeping. We will have a comfort break at 3 o'clock, where you have 5 minutes if you want to go and make a cup of tea or coffee or something. Just to let everybody know that today the webinar is being recorded, and that will be made available to all attendees very soon. So if you do miss anything, there'll be an opportunity to catch up on what was said. So I think the only other thing to mention is that everybody that's in attendance today, apart from the speakers and myself, will not be visible. You will all be muted and you won't be able to be seen. If you do have any technical questions, i.e. you're experiencing a problem, then please put that in the chat function and we'll see what we can do to address that. So I think that's everything introduced for now. So there's nothing left really for me to do but to introduce today's first speaker, and I'm pleased to say that is Carl Astbury. So Carl is the Senior Policy Advisor for Resilience at the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. Carl has extensive experience in emergency management, recovery, policy formation and strategy development across all areas of disaster risk management and recovery. Carl is currently developing the City Regions Resilience Strategy alongside the Global Resilient Cities Network, previously the 100 Cities Resilient Cities campaign. He's also the lead response to and recovery from any major incident that may affect Greater Manchester. And he is a UK subject matter expert on resilience and energy management to the United Nations, the UK Ministry of Defence, the World Association for Sustainable Development, as well as a range of other national and international audiences and forums. Carl, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. I'll just share my screen. And I'm hoping that is now sharing. If no one says anything, then I'm going to take that as a yes. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for the invitation to speak at this fantastic event with a wonderful panel who I'm glad to see are familiar faces. I'm really excited to talk about a topic that is very close to my heart, namely building urban resilience and the massive role that trees can play. I hope that I'll argue that urban trees are not a nice to have, rather that they are essential for a whole host of reasons. But I'm going to focus on my area of expertise, and that's around preventing, planning, responding and recovering from shock or disaster events. Pete's done a great job of introducing me, so I'm just going to dive right in. To give a quick overview of the presentation, I'm firstly going to talk about why resilience is important and what it means to us here in Greater Manchester. Secondly, I'm going to give a little more local context and talk through the shocks and stresses that we face here in Greater Manchester and the strategic landscape related to both resilience and trees. I'll then move on to 3 case studies that hopefully will provide some concrete examples of how trees can mitigate risk. I'll then briefly touch on the wider resilience benefits of trees and the importance of advocating for them in your urban environment. And lastly, I'll talk about the risks trees themselves face and a brief case study on how trees can take on symbolic meaning following disasters. Now, urban resilience for Greater Manchester is about our ability to withstand and survive testing events or strains on the city, and to grow and adapt when faced with such challenges. Now, these challenges can be long-term, such as deprivation, or come along suddenly, like flooding. And we know that there are many issues that we need to address, and that we will, unfortunately, face times of adversity. But if we can work together, think differently, and build on our successes when we do gain them, we can hopefully become a resilient city. And throughout the world, global trends such as urbanization, climate change, globalization, and technological development are being associated with the risk of an extensive and diverse range of emergencies, adverse events, and negative outcomes for local people. And local places have always faced shocks and stresses, but today's global risk amplifiers are drastically challenging our understanding of and ability to respond to the issues we face. I'm going to touch on 2 of these, namely urbanization and globalization. So in terms of urbanization, Greater Manchester, like many other urban centres, is a regional engine of economic growth and a place of social opportunity. Now, looking forward, the population of Greater Manchester is predicted to grow over the next 20 years. Well-designed urban areas can reduce the exposure and vulnerability of people to risk and can help them to cope when the unexpected occurs. As well as protecting people, good urban design can protect businesses, the economy, and people's livelihoods. Equally, if potential risks are not addressed, they can have significant consequences. And just to give one example, the estimated health and social care costs by 2035 of not tackling air pollution in England are nearly £5.3 billion. We therefore need to build resilience into Greater Manchester's plans for the future. Now, in terms of climate change, the Paris Agreement has driven international efforts to reduce global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. However, current projections suggest that we will exceed this target by the late 2030s, and as such, Greater Manchester has declared a climate emergency. Now, the consequences of climate change require us to plan for potential emergencies. The United Nations has stated that 90% of recorded major disasters caused by natural hazards from 1995 to 2015 were linked to climate and weather, including floods, storms, heat waves, and droughts. In Greater Manchester, climate change effects are predicted to include more powerful storms, increasing the risk of severe flooding, and more extreme temperatures, increasing the risk of drought in summer and disruption to services in winter. So how do these global drivers of risk play out at the local level? Now, this slide gives a quick visual representation of some of the biggest shocks we face in Greater Manchester, whether that be flooding or wildfires, pandemics, or electricity failure. And on top of this, we face other threats such as cyber attacks or terrorist atrocities. And these are the issues that keep me awake at night. And my job is to make our city region as prepared as we can be should the worst happen. However, I also realise that for us to be truly resilient, we need to not only prepare for the worst, but where possible, reduce the risk of the worst happening in the first place. When we assess the risks to our city, part of the process includes considering the consequences. Many different shocks and emergencies can result in similar outcomes, such as injuries or death, temporary or permanent loss of homes and the need for shelter, financial disruption, environmental damage, or damage to infrastructure. However, underlying pre-existing urban problems, also known as stresses, can make such consequences worse. And we know that the impacts experienced during shocks are rarely the result of the shock alone. With myriad connections across the city region, shocks are easily compounded, resulting in multiple adverse impacts, cascading failures of systems and functions, and differential outcomes between communities due to pre-existing vulnerabilities. The wildfires experienced across the northern fringes of Greater Manchester in 2018 provide a good example of the complex interaction between shocks and stresses. The chronic stress of pollution caused by the Industrial Revolution in the 18th and 19th century severely degraded the surrounding moorlands, killing off protective flora and exposing bare peat. Now, the moorland flora, especially a small plant called sphagnum moss, can hold 20 times its own weight in water, and when that's in good health, can act as a huge sponge, helping to protect Greater Manchester from flooding. In addition, this plant is essential in building the peat that lies beneath it, which itself is the biggest store of atmospheric carbon in the UK. The moss and peat together also help to filter out our drinking water. So when a shock event like a wildfire occurs on this landscape, we can lose the resilience benefits of flood protection and carbon storage that peat offers, whilst at the same time releasing carbon into the atmosphere, exacerbating climate change, and in turn, making these shock events even more likely. In Greater Manchester, to help us address urban risk and to understand the interrelationship with underlying stresses, we have a resilience strategy which recognises the need for us to both protect and promote the resilience value of the natural environment. Importantly, it recognises that whilst we must be prepared for the worst to happen, we must also move upstream the risk continuum. We must aim to reduce or prevent disasters happening in the first place. And one way of doing that is through targeted tree planting. And focusing on trees, we also have the All Our Trees strategy, which sets out Greater Manchester's ambitious aim to plant 3 million more trees, protect the trees and woodlands we already have, and importantly, to increase the engagement between our communities and the natural environment. So we have a good understanding of the risks we face in Greater Manchester, and how can trees help? I've provided 4 examples of how trees either mitigate risk or how the failure to protect trees can cause issues relating to new diseases, for example. Namely, trees can help mitigate flooding. They can cool the urban built environment, and they can provide a natural means of hostile vehicle mitigation. And deforestation has also been linked to the spreading of new novel viruses, showing how one of these global drivers of risks, globalization, which I talked about earlier, can result in cascading issues that cross borders and become a global crisis. Now, to bring these benefits a little more to life, I'll now talk through 3 local level case studies. The first is about 3 natural flood management methods that are being trialled on Crompton Moor to reduce the impact of flooding on the communities in the valley below. Now, Crompton Moor covers an area of around 70 hectares and has a watercourse which flows through the moor and feeds into the River Beal, which passes through the towns of Crompton and Shore. City of Trees is undertaking a significant programme of tree planting with over 4,000 trees planted in the last 3 years, with the aim of intercepting that rainfall, which will slow and reduce the amount of water that enters the Old Brook and its tributaries. In one area, 18 test plots have been set up, with Manchester Metropolitan University undertaking monitoring. This long-term experiment will assess the impact the trees have on the amount of rainwater that runs off the slope where they've been planted. Elsewhere, trees have been planted next to the Old Brook to help intercept rainwater directly running into the river and to stabilise the banks to reduce erosion. As a final flood-busting measure, 5 leaky dams have been built to slow the flow of water. Constructed from tree trunks that were selectively felled in the conifer plantations on the moor, these structures are able to hold back water in storage areas behind the dams during heavy rainfall events. This stored water is then slowly released over a longer period of time than a free-flowing river, which reduces the river's peak downstream, helping to lower the risk of flooding. And this hopefully gives an example of using trees to not only improve the environment and improve opportunities for wildlife, but also significantly contribute to reducing flood risk. Now, the task and challenge is to try and scale up this project following the success. Now, my second case study is about three London plane trees that were planted in a specially designed trench in Howard Street, Salford, with the aim of capturing the impact that trees had on both cleaning polluted water from road runoff and managing levels of surface water, which can lead to flooding. The trees were planted in a specially designed pavement where rainwater running off the road was diverted before going back into the sewer system at the other end. Using specialist equipment, a team from the University of Manchester monitored the quantity and quality of the rainwater as it enters and leaves the trench. Now, the system has achieved the following results. Average peak flow attenuation was 81%, reducing the rate at which rainfall enters into the sewer. Average volume reduction was 78%, reducing the actual volume of water that will end up in the sewer. An average delay of stormwater peak flow was 68 minutes, again reducing the amount of time it took for rainwater entering the system and then leaving via the sewer. Now, these results demonstrate through hard evidence that retrofit tree planting schemes in towns and cities can be used as a nature-based solution to tackle urban flooding. And lastly, I'd like to briefly touch upon the shock event that has affected, I think, everyone, COVID-19. As lockdowns took hold across many areas, our urban green spaces became vital, providing for many the only respite from being stuck inside. Now, this has helped renew and appreciate the value of nature in urban areas, but also importantly, has highlighted the disparity across our cities in terms of access to these green spaces. And this disparity is usually linked to deprivation, with our poorer communities not only more at risk of COVID, but also unable to access parks and recreation, which have been vital to mitigate the health and well-being impacts of economic lockdowns. And this brings me to an important point. Whilst we all recognise that we need more urban trees to help mitigate risk, we need to make sure they are planted in the places that will have the most impact. And equally important, we need to make sure that tree planting is not simply a top-down exercise where generous, usually white saviours enter a deprived neighbourhood and gift trees, but instead that communities themselves lead this activity, helped and assisted by those with resources, but not told or instructed. So how do we value trees when making investment decisions? As a society, we find it difficult to put natural capital on the balance sheet as an asset. There's frequently no asset value to the trees, only an expense, and this can be quickly value engineered out of investment proposals. As such, trees frequently fall to the bottom of many cities' budgets or off them altogether. Urban trees store carbon, they reduce stormwater, they improve air, they provide energy savings in terms of heating and cooling. They provide human health benefits, biodiversity, bird and pollinator habitats, slope stability, and the list goes on and on and on. They are like utilities, and they provide incredible services. And those services are immensely valuable to cities. They reduce the cost of doing all kinds of other work, including stormwater management, air purification, and water retention. One of the issues we have in a city is that an individual tree won't store enough carbon to make a blip on many carbon markets, but it has incredible value for countless lives. And I suppose my question for the panel and for the audience is, how do we better promote the value of individual or small clusters of urban trees in local level investment decisions? And whilst trees are hugely valuable assets in reducing urban risk, we must not forget that trees themselves will be facing some of the same risks our cities face, and namely increased temperatures causing drought, increased urbanization, and disease. And that's why we've included in this year's 12-month delivery plan for the Greater Manchester Resilience Strategy, the issue of ash dieback, recognising that more needs to be done at the city region level due to the level of ecosystem services we are set to lose over the coming decade. And I'd like to briefly touch upon an interesting case study before I conclude. In 2011, Japan suffered the biggest earthquake in the country's recorded history. The tsunami that followed caused huge devastation, no more so than in the town of Rikuzen, Takata, where 7% of residents were killed and a forest of 70,000 trees was washed away. All that was left of a 250-year-old forest was a single lone pine, which is now seen as a kind of totem, a sign of hope. It's a place to remember all that was lost. Now, I've included this case study to remind us that whilst recognising and accounting for the services that trees offer is hugely important, we must not forget the emotional importance of trees, the cultural significance of our forests, and the deep-rooted relationship that needs to be fostered between humans and nature, especially in urban areas. Now, to conclude, trees promote health and social well-being by removing air pollution, reducing stress, encouraging physical activity, and promoting social ties and community. Children with views of trees are more likely to succeed in school. Trees promote a strong economy and can provide numerous resources to the people that need them. While cities are getting hotter, trees can reduce urban temperatures. They provide habitat and food for animals. And finally, trees are valuable green infrastructure to manage stormwater. Money spent on urban forestry has a high return on investment. And as we navigate this human-dominated era, we need people who understand the nuances of the built environment and the role that trees should play as we strategically plan the cities of the future. And it's not just more trees, but the right trees in the right places. And it's not a nice to have. It's imperative that we utilise nature-based solutions to keep our communities safe and healthy, as we can't simply engineer our way out. The overwhelming evidence suggests that investing in trees is an investment in meeting the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Climate Change Agreement, and the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. But forgetting these international agreements and frameworks, ultimately, it's an investment for a better world. I'm going to leave it there, and I thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Carl. That was fascinating. And I have to say, as somebody that lives in Greater Manchester, really heartening that the Greater Manchester Combined Authority really takes seriously the benefits and the importance of trees in creating a more resilient city region. There's so many points there I'd like to pick up on, but we haven't got time. But I think one thing that probably stands out for me and is very current at the moment is obviously the importance of trees and green space with respect to the current pandemic. I think it's absolutely essential that communities that have experienced lockdown have places that they can escape to if they haven't got gardens. And I think the trees, green spaces, woodlands have been an absolute godsend for people in terms of their mental and physical health. So it's very interesting that the pandemic has demonstrated their value. So I thank you, Carl, for raising that point and so many other good ones. Fantastic, thank you. So as Carl mentioned, he's tried to put a question to us to go in the panel chat at the end. But if you do have any questions for Carl, please put them in the Q&A function now, and we'll do our very best to answer as many of them as we possibly can at the Q&A session towards the end. So thank you again, Carl. Fantastic. So I'd like to now move on to our second speaker. I'm very pleased to announce that we have Piero Palizzaro from the Municipality of Milan. Piero is the Chief Resilience Officer at Milan, and he is the city lead for the H2020 Lighthouse project, Sharing Cities. Piero is an advisor of the Italian Ministry of Environment, Land and Sea on urban adaptation policy to climate change. In recent years, Piero was the co-founder of Climalia, specialized consulting company providing climate services in Italy, where he operates as a resilience specialist. He is a member of the European Commission Mayor's Adapt Practitioners Work Group and a member of the FIRE 2016 Implementation Working Group at Climate Policy Initiative. He's also a member of the advisory board of the EU FP7 Ramses project that aims to structure a cost-benefit analysis methodology for urban adaptation plans. Piero, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter. Peter, and thanks for inviting me over. Let me share my screen first so we are sure everything is working. And okay. Can you confirm you're seeing full screen, right? Everything is there. Yeah, perfect. So, as you were introducing, I'm Piero Palizzaro. I'm the Chief Resilience Officer of the City of Milan. And thanks also with Carl, we know since a few years as member of the 100 Resilient Cities Network, now the Resilient Cities Network. And through the collaboration of cities, we believe that we can increase the demand of urban forest program and the need of having more green around the city, or take back naturally to the cities, because that is essential to prevent future shock comes from the climate change, but also to avoid, when over the last year we have seen something, even if there is no clear link between the COVID-19 and the air pollution, it's pretty clear that a population that is already exposed to air pollution, it's more sensible, it's more at risk or having an impact, a huge impact, as was the COVID-19 that is a respiratory disease at the end. So working on the urban forest program has multiple benefits for us. And first of all, is working on the health of our population, our community. Second, to increase the resilience of our cities to the future shock. And third one is a great opportunity to create a new job creation, a new job implementation. So Milan, as you know, it's a city that is growing faster before the COVID, is still going faster after the pandemic. So we are facing an important time when the city is changing in their managing their public space, in working their perspective, in looking forward to how the city should want to look. And to do that, we have started investing in urban resilience, and the urban resilience was introduced as a concept in 2019 and 2017 when we become member. And we see urban resilience, the ability of individuals, of communities, institutions, and business to survive, adapt, and grow regardless of what chronic stress and acute shock they suffer. So for us, the resilience is that kind of approach that is important in looking at the different perspectives on this. So to make resilience happen, to move through to bring back nature into the cities, in 2019, after the European election, the mayor has taken an important decision. Is to want to create, he decided to take on his shoulder the competencies over climate change and environment, and to do so and to implement and to push the environmental transition of the cities has created this new department, the Environmental Transition Department. The Environmental Transition Department is composed by 3 areas, 3 units. The City Resilience Department, Climate and Energy area, the Water Resource and Environmental Hygiene area. And these 3 elements are important in making the greening and then renaturalization of the city as a key element for every kind of planning and project in the cities. And we're going to describe how and how we approach, because sometimes when we think about how we should greening the city, it's not sometimes a matter of investment, even if we need more money. It's not a matter of having trees. It's more the way of how, as a public servant, we look and we think about greening the infrastructures. So what are the plans in the project for a greener Milan? First of all, in the city has a series of different plans that were linking to the greening of the city. The most important one for us is the City Masterplan 2030, the so-called PGT. Then we have the new Air and Climate Plan that will be approved hopefully at the end of May. And then we have a series of different programs that are essential. Clearly, the most important for us is ForestaMI. And ForestaMI is one of the most ambitious urban forest program in Italy at a global scale to plant 3 million trees before 2030. And then it's really important. But at the same time, to move through, we have also defined other kind of program. One is program related to school. So it's how Paris and Barcelona are implementing the Paris School OASIS. We have looked at the program as named Milano School OASIS. But one important other element that we always couple the environmental transition and the forest program with a digital transition, because to improve the capacity of the city to planning for greening, but at the same time to improve the capacity of the city to better monitor the impact and evaluate the benefit of this, we also create a new digital infrastructure to support this greening to environmental transition. So the first element, once in 2018, we were just created as a unit, was December 2017. We were asked to be part of the team developing the new master plan. And the new master plan, one of the 3 pillars of the new master plan, I remember with Carl, we got an interesting exchange between cities. It was mid-2018 about how we should somehow codify resilience and the greening into the future master plan of Milan, and then was the same with Manchester, and we also were together with Tbilisi. We started looking. One of the 3 pillars of the PGT, of the master plan, is a Milan that is green, livable, and resilient cities. And how we move to make this happen? First of all, we have started mapping all the future possible green and blue infrastructures in the cities. The green and blue infrastructures, or the others kind of element space we have identified for environmental regeneration process, for the pavement program. It's a mix, it's a map that will be useful for us, to colleagues, to let them have a clear overview where we should start, what is the priority, where we should start working on increase the greening. So that is so for all other departments that are part of the municipality, the mobility department, the school department, and the others. They know that every time they have to create a new maintenance or to work on a new regeneration program, they already know where they should implementing the pavement program, green program, or blue program in general. And then it's an informative level that was essential. The second one, we have introduced a new standard, is the Article 10 of the master plan. The Article 10 has a specific objective. And we have increased the emission reduction standard of every building, but we have introduced a new index, is the climate impact reduction index. And what is the meaning of this new index? normally we always evaluate how much a building impact on the existing environment, but with this index we have start looking to how we go reverse in the other way, how a building can reduce the impact of climate change at the local scale, and how introducing new standard to have green roof, vertical green facade, and improving the green and the permeable areas around the building. So that is one of the important challenge for us. This was made thanks to the dialogue we got with Berlin, for example, where they have the BUF as one of the standards. On the other side, also to dialogue we have with the small municipality around the city of Milan, the metropolitan government, to start sharing common legislation to improve the capacity of introducing or take back nature into the city. So that can start somehow from city collaboration side, and on the other side also thanks to the experience of the Bosco Verticale that was designed by Stefano Boeri in the city of Milan. Second element is the air and climate plan. The air and climate plan has set a new objective and new goals for the city of Milan. Specifically, we have one focus of the city is Cool Milan, how we should cool down the city, the temperature in Milan. Milan, since the 1951 until 2017, based on the European Environmental Agency data, we've seen an increase of 3.3 degrees. So if you think of the global scale is 1.2, 1.4, the city of Milan is 3.3. So to reduce the temperature in the city, we identified two kinds of action. The first one is the urban cooling and reduction of the heat island effect in the city. And the second action is Milan as a sponge city. And then it's two elements that's really important for us. How we are working on these two elements, which are, the first one is the tree planting plan. This is not the urban forest program. That is part of the urban forest program because it's for the urban forest program is for the metropolitan government and not only for the city. But this is how we should, in the last 3 years, we have seen an increase since the 2017 until now, of plus 122% of trees that were planting only in the city of Milan. So in 2017, we have planted 9,200 trees and we reached 20,400. And at the end of this season, we should reach 27,721 plants in the city. That is two kinds of plants. We got 20,000 trees and 7,000 half shovels. So that is how the cities also increase their capacity of planting trees. But how does this happen? We have a different kind of action how we normally do it. One is to how we care and adopt a public garden. So one of the most important part for us is we have identified areas around the city where citizen or association or private can adopt a public spot and start taking care of the green areas in that spot. So this initiative, it's in the last 10 years have seen an increase of 900% of sponsorship, because it's based on sponsorship, this kind of program, moving from 50 to up to 504 green space given to private. What is the key element on this? That making this participation, these participatory activities with the private, there is more citizens now that are taking care of green, and there are more citizens that have respect for the nature instead of what was 10 years ago. And then it's not only a matter of how we increase the greening, but of how the greening is accessible and how the greening become part of the everyday life of our community, because they are using and they are taking care of what is a common good among the city. The other program we're looking at was with ForestaMI, that is quite well known around the globe at the moment, is the 3 million tree by 2030. So it's meaning to increase of 5% of the canopy cover in the city with absorption of 5 million tons of CO2 per year. If we look at the number in the first couple of years, we reached more than 300,000 trees in the metropolitan area in 2 years. That is almost on track of what we were looking as an opportunity, because the first up to 2 years and a half of work we have done over the last month. With a lot of planning, identifying, having a dialogue with more than 133 municipalities that they are part of the metropolitan government of the city of Milan. So we have started co-designing the process, mapping the areas, account what was already done by all the municipality. And thanks to this excellent work done by the Polytechnic of Milan as a research unit in support of the program, we are now boosting the initiative, and in the next few months, a few weeks for the new season, we're going to launch a new initiative to have a new green highway program, so to increase the planting among the highway, among the ring, among the main road of the city, because that is also an important element of greening, is to reduce the noisy pollution in the city. Reducing the noisy pollution is reducing the cost of health system in the city, and again, is another prevention measures in terms of health disease for our community. The focus of ForestaMI has a different kind of focus. On the top left, you can see the focus on schools. So we have mapped all the different biggest spots on schools where we should planting. There is a detailed information. Then we go to the industrial areas, or productive areas, where we should go planting. And there is an interesting collaboration with the industrial association, because we also start exchange the needs of the private to say how we should also prevent impact of damage on industrial activities using the greening and the forest program on this. On the other is the areas to be reclaimed, and then it's an important goal. That is something that we have also looking, thanks to the European Commission that have launched this new Next Generation EU. It's a financial program supporting the recovery of the European members after the pandemic. We have started asking for the next generation, for example, how we should not planting, but reclaim and recover abundant areas that are now polluted and make it available for the future planting program of the city, so in the next few years. And then there is all the other uncultivated green that could be maybe used also for greening the cities, because at the same time we have to balance the need of increase the green surface and the forest surface, but at the same time also to how we should look more at the built environment and how we should increase the tree planting over the city. But to make this, there is another important element for us. Thanks to the European Commission support, we also are running a program, it's named VEG-GAP, that we are identify which are the best vegetation for to plant that could be contribute to reduce the air pollutant on our side, but also that could be adapt or survive to the future climate condition in the cities. So this program is also helping us to reframe a bit our list of trees that we can potentially plant in the city. This is an important element also because after 3 years of program, there is another important issue that is emerging, that this year we almost finish all the trees and seeds available in the metropolitan area of Milan that could be were available to plant, because also we try to get to buy and to get the tree in the short kilometers, some short distance around the city. And this VEG-GAP program is really important for us also to make us available to quantify the benefit of our urban forest program in terms of air quality. The other program to bring back nature into the city is that over the last 20-30 years, maybe, without maybe, but for sure, we have designed some, we don't have done the proper design of our streets or our public space. So one of the programs looking at the Rotterdam experience is to the paving program. So how we should remove the gray spot, like the one on the left, and how we should go in for new rain garden and a few green spots. That is another important thing for other elements. First one, normally this gray spot are being used by cars, so it's illegal parking. There's illegal parking in the parks. We parks for the 96% of their time cars are parked. But the problem is then when the car are parked over the summer, because a car parked in Milan over in July could reach 80 degrees as a temperature. This is meaning there's another source of heating in the system. So we are looking at the pavement program also to increase the capacity of the city to absorb the heat, but on the other end, also to reduce what is something that is an illegal process of illegal parking in cities. And then they also increase the beauty of our cities and livability of our cities. That is the total surface that we have also looked as We have mapped and we have identified different programs. This program was kicked last year with a 20 million euro program by the city of Milan with their own budget, and we are starting the pavement some of the areas around the cities with another important goals in terms of to reach. That is 250,000 square meters of possible new depaving areas in the cities. The other one, as I said, is the Milan school OASIS. Then it's important because schools were one of the elements that were much suffer over the pandemic. Pupils were having the learning from distance program, but at the same time, schools has a huge opportunity for us in terms of increase the accessibility of green spot. Why? Because we have already a program named Open School, Milano Scuole Aperte, that it's given the opportunity to association, to parents, to ask for using schools when they are closed in the afternoon, over the weekend, over the summer, to make more social activities. So our goals, our idea is also to, let's say, to open the school or during the summer over the day and over all the years, and to make new garden when schools are closed for the community. So even in the direction of the sitting 50 minutes is to increase the capacity or to get more green spot close to every house. And then it's another important element for us. The Milan School Oasis also have created a kind of intervention kit because we also couple with the tactical urbanism experience. And we're going to launch the 7th of June, also a new program named Play Street. So how we can have recreate a green spot through drawing or through murales, through graffiti with kids to start let them understanding how we should change their street, how we should change their school, and then going for real and making a green spot. So as a co-design participatory process. At least, not last, what is important things, when we start this program, that's something that we were discussing with another cities, we realized that we didn't have a proper mapping of the underground service of the city. City of Milan is pretty small, it's 181 square kilometers, and we have the metro underground, there is the ICT, there is the water, the sewage system that was designed initially by Leonardo da Vinci, and all these elements required to be well known if we want to go and tree planting in the gray areas and in the built environment. So one of the work we have done over the last 1 year and a half, thanks to the support of the Resilient Cities Network, the ESRI, and the Bloomberg Associate, was to create this new portal, this new Geoportale, where we have start looking at all the underground services. That is speeding up all the process when people and colleagues want to plant a tree, want to depave, to better understand what is on the underground, and then it's a really helpful element for us to make this happen more faster and short. So that is how we are approaching, how we are looking to bring back nature into the city. So are important the 3 million trees, but are important at the same time the value chain and the economic chain of the production, but at the same time the capacity of all our public servants to better understanding and to better design and planning the future of our cities. And let me just conclude, say that to make this happen, we need to make stronger collaboration among cities. And this initiative should become more and more often, because increased demand of green and trees is what also creates more demand on the market and more creation of investment. So thank you very much to let me over and open for questions later on.
Piero, that was excellent. Really interesting. As somebody that has been to Milan and has seen some of the projects there, it's truly inspiring. Of course, probably Bosco Verticale is the most famous green building in the world, I would say. And I think it has inspired lots of other people to try and do something similar. And we do have a development in Manchester that is trying to achieve something that the Bosco Verticale did, albeit it's not at quite the same scale, but we hope it might inspire others to follow suit. There was lots and lots of interesting things, so many things I can't or haven't got the time to go over, but I think what I would like to do is just maybe provide some prompts if people would like to put some questions in the Q&A function. Piero mentioned that Private sponsorship is now a key area for supporting green spaces, improving green spaces and managing them, and that this had increased by 900%, from 50 to 504 spaces. I know colleagues at the Greater Manchester Combined Authority will be very interested in how the municipality of Milan has managed to create those partnerships with the private sector to maintain and support green space and trees. I think that's really interesting. So very, very interesting is Piero's reference to schools. Again, I hope this will be another question that people might ask. Schools do present huge opportunities in terms of providing green space in areas where there may not be much green space, and so that is a good lesson learned. I'm sure that could be applied elsewhere in Europe and beyond. So it would be good to find out perhaps a bit more, if people could ask Piero a question about that. And I think also, what's particularly interesting for me is on the tree planting targets that Piero mentioned, that a lot of work has been undertaken in urban areas to understand the issue of underground services. It is a common problem for us in England, in the UK. If we want to plant trees in the locations where they are most needed, so for example, Piero mentioned that planting trees on highways is good for helping to address noise pollution, and of course it can also be good for addressing air pollution, but services are often a problem. So we need to get a better understanding of where those services are. So I think that's a good question potentially for someone to ask, how Milan has gone about looking at mapping those services, what techniques they have used, because that is really a good way to identify the best planting locations going forward.